I hope nobody would critique that level of thinking. If you do, you're a hindrance to yourself, because you need to think creatively. Planting churches in cities is expensive.
Yeah, it is.
Even church attendance is suffering some challenges depending on what part of the nation you're in. If you're in Texas, if you're in the Bible Belt, don't critique what someone's doing in Seattle, man. Like, you don't even know.
But now, as promised, to get into the weeds a little bit, money. A lot of people don't like, a lot of churches at least don't like to talk about money because it is a very sketchy territory, but you got to have funds for the mission. You got to fuel the mission somehow. So what is the best ways for churches to make money online through YouTube or other platforms?
Great question. I think the biggest thing is influence comes first, income comes second. So my best answer to the question is in the traditional way. The worker deserves his wages, don't muzzle the ox while he's treading out the grain. So it is through reaching believers. Sure, you could also see God do miracles and maybe somebody whose heart's stirred. But the Pauline ministry model was making tents, which I honor, pastors that are bivocational or work in different jobs. They got that day job and then they're doing their ministry. So there's funding your ministry in other ways because you're doing your tent making. And then eventually you're doing your ministry full time. Your goal is to get a base of donors, of people whose life's impacted, and to cast vision for them. Well, you need somebody to cast vision for. So I think that it's a new school. Old school is like ministry partners and like different levels of ministry partners. But I think I think finding just new ways to do that, people who are blessed and impacted by your online content. The biggest one here probably is making sure your relationship with money is solid and your mindset about money is solid, because you should be unashamed of the gospel, and you should be unapologetic about expecting, just like Paul did. He's like, I actually don't expect anything from you, but I'm giving you an invitation for your benefit. You need a biblical worldview about money, about money being donated, about how to communicate that. But I would be bold in sometimes Paul was like crazy bold. He's like, listen, and you should be supporting me. You ain't, but you should be. Like, it's funny, like you read that in the scripture. So he's communicated clearly that ethic of gathering, people to support the ministry. So saying that, everything starts small. Churches start in a home church with 6 people in someone's house. And it grows from there. Your YouTube videos might get 12 views, and it might be one person who wants to support the ministry at $100 a month, And so I think that's thing one at some point, giving people a way to do things, or to invite them, or to, ask them to participate. Practically, we could probably move into sort of 2.0 of what some YouTube creators do. And for mission-driven YouTube channels, there are things like Patron, which is not basically monthly support of creators. And this is used by a lot of creators. I've seen paintball channels do it, any kind of channel. I've seen artists do it, musicians do it. And it's where people support at $5 a month, $10 a month. And again, influence comes first, income comes second. It goes back to this idea. If you could get 1,000 people supporting you at $100 equivalent a year, like $8 a month, that's $600,000. No, it's $100,000 a year. So 1,000 people supporting you at $100 a year is $100,000. And if you thought about that just being your online ministry, you could go a long way with vMix software, a streaming computer, your internet connection, your microphones, whatever else, the tools needed for ministry, plus potentially salaries or whatever else. So things like Patreon, I know some Christian creators that kind of do, they're sort of like personal brands that do Christian. They have Patreons oftentimes is a major platform, which is a particular platform that makes it easy to donate on a reoccurring basis to creators. But then I think the last thing is kind of like things that you're doing. Of course, you have your church's channel, but you've also got your personal channel where you know about things like affiliate marketing, where if you talk about a guitar pedal or a USB microphone or something, and you review that and someone clicks the link and the affiliate link you put in the description, you can make a percentage of that income. And it reminds me of a friend of mine that I used to work with in ministry named Miguel, who was a worship leader, and then he also had a channel about home recording. So him and his wife had a worship EP out, a couple songs, led worship at the church, had a salary at the church, but wasn't making, like, his music wasn't elevation worship. So it wasn't like, you know, Hillsong. It wasn't bringing in any substantial money or even barely any money at all, whether that's Spotify. That's very difficult to do. But what he did was he did a home studio channel and help people with home recording in Ableton software, which, to help listeners, Ableton at the time was $500 on Amazon. So he talked about which is the best version of Ableton as his video. It actually ranked in YouTube search, and because it was a software product, the commission was 10%. So every time someone purchased Ableton at $500, he made $50.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a great example of thinking entrepreneurially. And I am a big believer in 2021 and beyond in the pastorpreneur. I think you got to play to your gifts and your skill set. But I know my pastor, he has businesses. That offends some people. But like when you're a church planner, man, I mean, critique all you want, but man, you got to figure things out. And what they've done is they've tied it. One of their businesses is a church sign company, and they partner with a print on demand, and his wife's good at design, and so they can help churches just like they did for our church, which created the pop-up signs and the kids ministry sign and the kids, like, and all these different things. They just also turn that in a way creatively to serve others. Another pastor friend of mine was able to get into a particular lease of a building that had kind of an extra building that they weren't going to necessarily need to use, and they were very much in church planning mode. So they were going to sublease the other building as a way to offset costs. I think that I hope nobody would critique that level of thinking. If you do, you're a hindrance to yourself, because you need to think creatively. I planting churches in cities is expensive.
Yeah, it is.
You know, even church attendance is suffering some challenges depending on what part of the nation you're in. Never, if you're in Texas, if you're in the Bible Belt, don't critique what someone's doing in Seattle, man. Like, you don't even know. So you got to think about being creative in your local context and find a way. And I believe God will give you wisdom as you also maybe expand your viewpoint and you're open and learn new skills, because I do think that there's some very creative things you can do to earn money for ministry, for your family, so that you can have less of a salary from your church or no salary to start. So listen, so that we go all the way back to maybe hiring somebody to help you with media, and people go, oh, I don't have enough resources. God might drop an idea that gives you the resources needed to fund that expansion of the ministry. And I think that with how complex and expensive the world is today to do certain things, this is the way that kind of the modern minister is thinking.
That is so good. They were accusing Paul of taking up too many offerings. It's fun to read that account with that in mind and thinking about what can I do for the ministry that can generate more income so we can ultimately do more in the community that we're in and online.
Could social media be used for radical levels of discipleship? It already is.
Yep.
It's like money. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is. Money is a tool. Social media is not the root of all evil. It is a tool.